Hey, Pastor Craig Gorc here. Welcome to the Pastor's Podcast. I have the privilege today of sitting with our lead pastor, Pastor John, our worship pastor, Jason, and our media guy, Ryan. We're going to talk about our upcoming worship album. We thank you for being here today. If you like it, we'd encourage you to click the like button and subscribe to it. And at the end, we'll tell you how and when you can access our worship album, but join our conversation about our upcoming worship album. Awesome.
But it's a little weird for Ryan to be on this side of the camera.
Yeah, it's weird.
Or on the mic, this side of the mic.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's not totally
First
weird.
for everything.
Yeah. You've been behind the mic before in other aspects and scenarios.
Yep,
Just a little bit.
But just a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the worship album, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, where did the idea to do a worship album come from? Like, what's the heart behind wanting to do a worship album, you guys?
Yeah. I think we should start with Pastor John.
Should we start with me?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, I think, there's just like part of the heart behind it is just the biblical imperative. Like you see through the Psalms, like sing to the Lord a new song. And there's something about new songs. Yeah. And in worship music, it should be like old themes, right? Because we're singing about the Lord and about biblical truth. But just the idea to sing new songs, and the songs that we receive from other songwriters throughout, whether that's throughout the decades or centuries or through other contemporary writers, like they all started in a local context. So I think part of our heart was like, what does worship at Sonrise sound like? What does worship from the Pacific Northwest sound like? Amongst our people. Yeah,
good distinction.
Our story, same God, of course, as anybody else who's writing worship music, same scriptures, but just contextualizing it in our culture, our generation, and then also we've had prophecies about writing music out of our church for a long time. And then I would say also there's just a bunch of creatives that God's assembled here, and I'm just one in a large company, and with, of course, with the guys at the table here, and then also just others in our church that have that kind of creative calling to write, to do music, to do arrangements, to record. Mm-hmm. So all those things kind of combine, I guess, to just create like a momentum for us to like we desire to do this.
So that's the heart behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unlike an artist who's doing it for livelihood,
right?
What was the motivation to put another worship album out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I've been worship pastor for about 4 years now, which is kind of crazy. It's been 4 years, but I just when you're looking at the people that you are shepherding and you're are part of your team, and it just really we have just really a lot of creative people, great songwriters, you call them lyricists, poetic, a lot of things that I felt like it, in really also actually probably the main thing, it has to really be like the vision of Pastor John and Pastor Grace, like, so it's on his heart, I think, number one.
Yes.
But just also seeing a place for people to express.
Yeah.
And that's good.
And so it's like, what can we do as a team? And we're totally learning in this process. Our worship album has 13 songs on it. Maybe 13 songs was quite a big thing to bite off right off the bat, but we're doing it and we're making it happen. But it has been a little bit longer process. But we have learned so much. But I think for me too is like, I really want to make a place for creative people in our church that love Jesus to express their heart and worship.
Right.
So,
and I think too, like, why do it? It's like, as a creative, it's like I almost have to write something. I haven't played music myself as much, and played bass guitar for a lot of years. And I love being a part of music, but then writing poetry, writing books, now helping write songs, like it does something in me, and then doing it just like creativity begets more creativity. Yeah, right. So it's like I got to express these ideas, these there's like a little song in my head, it's got to get out. There's a little poem in my head or a book in my heart, it's got to get out.
That's right.
And I think it's fun to be able to watch other people start to enter into that process too, and then like people are inundated. Like even the small group of what is there 6 or 7 that help contribute to some of the new songs, maybe, or with this project, and there's more involved in the recording and everything and the arrangements, but already they're flooded with new ideas for more songs, you know, and it's like there wasn't really that activity. There was some activity in people before that, but it really heightened after the ball started rolling, you know, or like,
and doing a project like this does kind of consolidate all that gifting and all that focus, right? And so this is an expression of all that focus, right? You said it earlier, Pastor John, it's a reflection of our community, of our faith community, an expression of the community to the Lord, but then back to the community. It gives us songs to sing that came from this community, right? And is it in what particular way would you say it reflects our mission or our vision as a church?
I mean, I think for us, you know, it's like a little moniker. We're a spirit-filled church family that's all about Jesus, right? And so we want like spirit-filled worship. Amen. It's about that ushers in the presence, the manifest presence of God, and it's ultimately all about Jesus. And I think, you know, there's things that God's Spirit comes upon in the Scripture. There's the anointing, the power and presence of the Spirit comes upon, you know, certain activities that we do. Repentance, faith, praying for the sick, setting people in leadership, coming in and resting upon us in corporate worship. But I think one of the things that God is really that pleases His heart is when we elevate and honor Jesus, when we honor His Son, and we lift Him up and the finished work of Christ. So we really feel like theologically and you know, we want our songs to be really vertical, if you will. You know, it's kind of has been a buzzword in past seasons. You know, like vertical worship is really about like, let's sing songs about God, for God, that move His heart, that bring Him glory, that lift up Christ, that lift up the cross, the resurrection, the victory of what Christ has done for us, and pour out our love on Him. And worship songs, you know, and there's a place for worship songs, I guess, that are reflective, like the Psalms, and introspective, meditative. But for songs we're writing as a church for like our corporate worship album that we're completing right now, our first full album. There's been some songs and projects people have done here over years past, but like our first live record with our own original songs and some covers, right? To this kind of scope, it's our first one. Anyway, it's like, how do we really guard, I guess, like we don't want to just sing any songs, you know, but we want to sing songs that really lift up Jesus and really exalt Him. And I think when we come is that idea of a royal priesthood, a priest's first ministry is unto the Lord. And so actually our corporate worship services are a time where we want to collectively, as the church and the body of Christ here, we want to come and minister our love, our adoration, our affections to Jesus and lift Him up. And so we wanted to capture that, you know, in our recordings. And so even like in our writing of new songs, it's like, oh, there might be some great song ideas out there that people will release independently or on other projects. But like for us, like on a Sunday morning or in a worship recording, like it's going to be vertical. It's going to be about exalting His name.
And we have the benefit of having around this table 3 people who contributed to these songs, right? And so we are part of the community, writing songs for the community, as you said. And there are 3 of you around the table right now. So you could all comment on just what the story is behind 1 or 2 of the songs, right? Because they come from somewhere. They come from a thought or, you know, a focus. And so what are some of the stories behind the songs? 1 or 2, I guess. So
why don't we start with Shalom Everlasting?
Okay.
Why don't you share about it?
Well, I mean, I mean, all of it's really good. Shalom was it's a special song. I didn't write any of the lyrics or anything, but I helped with the music portion of it.
Sure.
And it kind of
which means
he wrote the music. He gave us a demo track of the whole song, like with no lyrics or no voices, but just like
it's still a need for a melody.
He gave us like yeah, there was a little bit of a melody line maybe with the guitar, or at least there was parts, some music parts that
Sure.
contributed to it. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting though, because we had that, and then we were sitting on it for a little while, and nothing really came of it until we had a songwriters meeting with like Chris Smith and Taylor and Addie and yourself and myself,
James
and John, James and
Yeah.
John were there,
Yeah.
and I really want to let Chris tell the story because he is going to tell it way better. But
Yeah.
he just had this line, and I was just like, he said it to me. I was sitting next to him, and I was like, dude, that is really powerful.
Yeah.
And I was like, where or when did you write? And he kind of told me, what
was the line?
Give me peace beyond understanding,
Yeah.
shalom everlasting in the midst of the. What is it?
In the midst of the crashing waves.
In the midst of the crashing waves.
The chorus.
And I was like, that's just, it's really depictive, but it's just something that rolls off the tongue too. It's not, it's not forced. It's and it just fit.
And we tried how many times, Jason?
Yeah, I always like to my big contribution to that specific song was writing the melody lines and parts that didn't work.
Yeah.
So that really it helped us get to.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes you got to fail forward.
Yeah. So we failed forward a couple times, and it was actually really funny because we had met for a Friday Saturday, and we were working on the song, and then we kind of scrapped our original idea, started on something new. I remember it was actually just Ryan and I, later Friday, and then we were like, let's sleep on it. Came back, we scrapped that, and then.
Yeah.
Just a few hours later, what Shalom became was there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was just like God breathed because it was so easy.
And
like once we had that, then it was like we had a couple verses we were kind of going off of, and then we I think we went to Psalms 23 and 24, and then we went to I can't remember the other verse, but man, it was just
we used some of the different psalms for the verses and the bridge. But then how Chris got those lyrics like months, years.
Yeah, it might have been
before
years,
actually.
I heard it was years ago.
Yeah. So
through a thing he was going through.
right when his dad passed away, when Pastor Scott passed away, he was just kind of in that dark moment, and just hurting, of course, losing your dad, who's your close, loving father, and he's such a great guy.
And
right.
He was a pastor on staff.
He was a pastor on staff at Sonrise.
Yes.
Very beloved by everybody and made a big difference in a lot of lives.
Right.
And then Chris, he's gone, and he's just kind of in that raw emotion, and he writes those like kind of the song lyrics or a prayer. Or, I don't know. Did he write it as a song first, or just like kind of like thoughts? I don't know.
I think it was just a thought.
Just a thought.
And like a prayer.
Like
something he had in his head.
Right. So then fast forward, that must be a couple of years at least or more.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it was like 2 years.
2 years later.
He passed 4 years ago, so
right.
or thereabouts.
Yeah. And so by the time we got the song idea out, and you guys were working on, and then Chris brings those lyrics, so it's more kind of one of the more creative ways in a sense that any of the songs came about, as far as like musical idea with no lyrics, and then a couple tries at least that don't work, it's not coming together, but we like the music, we like the how the song flowed, and we're like, this just sounds like something will work. Just keep go back to the drawing board, and then those old lyrics for the chorus, but then there was no verses, and then they kind of can't put one verse together, and then another verse came later.
And it's interesting though, because you have obviously it was came from something that was not good, but
exactly.
It's funny how Scott was a part of this church, and he was a forerunner in music.
Yeah, he's an incredible drummer.
And would push us, for years to just, oh, you guys are gonna do it. You're gonna be putting out music and all this stuff.
Yeah, so true.
And just he was always wanting to see that happen. And so it's really special. It's a really special song.
No, it is. And you're right. Honestly, he'd be more excited than anybody that we were doing.
He'd be right there.
That we're doing this project.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you alluded to it, the writing process of a song.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as linear probably as people would think, right?
Yeah.
It comes together in little chunks, and it's not chronologically always in the right order, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
so
it just varies.
Maybe this song or another song. What's the writing process look like?
Jason did one on his
Yeah.
his Apple Watch.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
You hum it?
So
You
unfortunately,
want to play it for us on your
unfortunately, my watch is dead at the moment.
okay.
Sadly. But yeah, it was actually funny. We had just had a staff day at the lake, Lake Taps, and
Yeah.
and so my wife Ann and I were driving to Leavenworth.
Okay.
And this was like later August, mid-August, and I think I had an idea for a melody line, and I had some lyrics that should and I actually literally driving over there just started singing to my watch,
Like just on your voice memo.
on my voice memo.
Yeah.
And then I went back and looked. It was a couple of days ago, and then a couple of days later, we're in Leavenworth. Our friends that we stayed with have a piano, and then so I recorded that on my watch too.
That's
And
awesome.
so you can see it's a little bit more solidified, closer to what it became. And then I think the bridge came later. It was really funny. Like I was actually kind of really having kind of a rough weekend too, I remember. And just a song like this comes. I mean, you're literally just driving, and here's a song, and you have no idea at the moment if it's going to be any good. Like I have hundreds of things that are not good that I sang it to my phone or whatever.
I heard Jack Hayford wrote Majesty in his car
Oh, wow.
driving down the road.
That's a
He
good
just
one.
came to him and he started
I
humming
love
it
that
out.
song.
But so
Put it on the playlist for a Sunday.
there you go.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
But it just goes to show it doesn't happen because you just lock yourself away. The inspiration comes from
Yeah.
whenever it hits, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And you got to capture it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
So how long did that one take for you to get?
So that was like 2022, if I recall right. And then it was about a year later, a group of us went to Leavenworth and just intentionally took a night away
gotcha.
to write
Leavenworth
songs.
again.
We were in a cabin.
In Leavenworth again.
Leavenworth,
Yeah.
something about Leavenworth.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
And I just remember it's probably about 11 o'clock. I'm like, hey, I have this song. And I remember one of the guys, Taylor, is totally laying asleep on the floor.
Oh.
And Ryan and I are playing. And I don't remember, John, if you were there
Yeah.
at the moment or not. But and it was actually very different to a degree of like the style of it in that moment than what it became. But that was kind of where it was just like,
Yeah.
oh, kind of put it on the radar a little bit.
Right.
to-
It was funny
right,
because
so-
we were so tired. We'd
Yeah,
been
we were tired.
literally riding all day, and it was like you said, Taylor was falling asleep. People were just getting really tired.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there at the
Yeah.
computer, and you sat down at the piano, and we're just like, we just need, maybe there's more ideas, maybe there's this, and you started playing that song, and I said, don't stop, and I hit record, and
Yeah. Awesome.
it was,
Yeah.
I was like, this is, where did this come from?
Yeah.
I think I asked that. You were like, you're just like,
Awesome.
oh, I had this idea about a year ago. I was like,
Yeah.
are you? Where did?
Wait, I know.
He's holding out on us.
Hey,
That's right.
honestly, these guys that I'm honored and humbled to work with Jason and Ryan on this stuff because they're crazy talented. They're humble.
Yeah.
There's no ego I shouldn't say no ego because sometimes when people shoot my ideas down, nobody shoots them down bad. I'm like, oh, that kind of hurts. So maybe I have a little bit that's
Hey,
getting rubbed
if
off.
I can confess,
but
I
you can
heard
confess
it.
too.
There you go.
You're like,
Hurts.
oh, they don't like my idea because it's easy to feel personally attached to your ideas.
Sure.
But
Yeah. Right.
out of that, we did some other songwriting sessions. Like Exalted Lamb, I had the lyrics just because I love the narrative of the gospel, and the Lamb of God is my favorite theme of looking at the whole scripture. So I just had a passion for it and put some lyrics down, and then these guys helped with the music and the melody and everything like that. I didn't have any of that. But then Your Presence was the first song we wrote kind of together, and it's kind of funny because we just did it on Sunday again, this last Sunday morning. Your presence is where I want to be. Well, wait, no, what's the verse though that starts out? I come before.
Oh yeah.
I come before you, Lord.
Expectant.
Expectant,
Actually, I
full
think
of
that's it.
wonder.
It's full
Is
of
that the
wonder.
second verse? Yeah. But
Eyes
our
on
original
the
lyric
expect-
was,
that's it, yeah.
"I come before you, Lord, abandoned, empty-handed."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what we meant was we come to the Lord like in a place of abandonment, kind of like Mary of Bethany comes like to lay everything at Jesus's feet, to like surrender. She surrenders this alabaster oil. She bows at his feet. And we had people telling us when we first started singing it on Sunday mornings that like, you're having everyone in the church confess that God has abandoned them
right.
and that they're empty-handed, like we're just poor. And I'm like, they're like, this is horrible. So we did actually adjust the lyrics, but funny enough, Gateway Worship released a worship album like shortly after we started singing our own, and the name of the whole album was like Abandoned.
Oh.
And I was like, or something, it might,
Word for them.
there might have been 2 or 3 words. So I was like, see, no, just kidding.
Yes. Yes.
But I've heard other worship groups that are writing talk about how they tested it eventually if they feel like it might work on a Sunday
Right.
before they record it or whatever, or maybe in a certain environment, a prayer meeting or some kind of setting. And it was just kind of funny because we started getting all this, unsolicited feedback, but it actually became helpful. And I think we made the song better because we don't want people to be confused.
Yeah, right.
Right. And some people even were like, oh, why are we bowing at his feet? Or like, why are we, and I was like, well, it says he makes the place of his feet glorious. And like, well, no, we should anoint not his feet, but his head. And I was like, well, it's scripture. So I'm sticking that. I'm not going to budge lyrically on that one because just because you want it to look different, somebody else, it doesn't connect.
Right.
It is a scriptural theme, or like bowing at the king's feet, is a part of our humbleness and adoration and worship. So it was our original songs. They all came very differently. We have kind of talked a little bit about a process of like, as we move into the future, like how do people bring us a song? Do we decide if we want to record it or just help that artist kind of get it done on their own? And I don't know if we have a super clean flow chart or not that we've developed. Jason might have it.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of like it probably needs to be.
Oh, that's right. You have showed it to me now. Yeah, that I remember it a little.
Kind of like,
but there is kind of like a little bit of a process of like, okay, like let's look at the lyrics doctrinally.
Yeah.
Let's, look at the musical parts, and kind of how do you get it like concept to completion. I don't know who originated that phrase, right? But you got an idea, and then it becomes an actual song that someone can like download or listen to, And
there are different parts along the way. Sometimes something comes out of like what you guys mentioned, just driving down the road, or it comes out of like Chris's thing, out of a moment of pain. You have something that you're starting with or contributing, right?
Yeah.
And there are big, what's the word I'm looking for? Big beginnings where the whole thing comes together almost simultaneously, right?
Yeah,
right.
But most songs, I'm assuming, don't happen that way. So you're kind of stitching things together as you move along. But what about the collaboration process? When you guys get together, are you all contributing to trying to make a particular song better, bringing melodies, lyrics, bridge, all the different components of music? Or is one person leading the process, or are you all kind of contributing along the way?
Yeah, and I think this is where it's kind of important to know kind of to a degree roles. Like we all know, technically, if you wanted to put a label, Pastor John is our senior pastor, but in the context of working on a worship album, he would be like our executive producer, meaning like at the end of the day, he wants to make sure it aligns with the church values. Something that he wants to represent the church.
So
that's
he makes
really
the final call on certain things.
So like, and like if John doesn't like the mix or he doesn't like the melody of a, that's not. He'll let us know. We'll go back and fix it. Or we can also push back and not negatively, but like
absolutely.
Like, hey, here, well, what do you think? We tried this and this. We feel like this is the strongest, and we'll talk it through. So usually when we get together as songwriters, what I love about our team is there's a lot of, I think deep down we have egos, we want,
All ego isn't bad, by the way.
Right.
You want to feel good about what you accomplished.
For sure.
Right.
But I think it is important in songwriting because you are being very vulnerable. Like, here's an idea I created, or, and, there's a lot of things you're going to have to say no to or that just don't fit. And I think our team has done a really good job of, just going in with that mindset of like, maybe I started writing the song, but I am open to seeing what it can become. And that's going to be, getting feedback, maybe changing some things around, maybe dropping sections of the song, maybe adding brand new sections, and I feel like our team really did that very well.
It's a lot of coalescing of different components and different contributors.
Absolutely.
But you all come up liking the end product. Is that fair to say?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like each song comes different, like because like Jason brought there was a little bit of a process, I guess, as you heard, with Ryan and Jason working late at night on
Right.
Exalt Forevermore.
Right.
But it kind of came more complete.
Yeah.
Jason had lyrics, a melody, so he will ask us, like, hey, I got this song. Do you guys think it needs another verse? Do you like the bridge? You know, like, do you think it works? Do we need to take anything away or change anything? But it's pretty much like his song. So, like, even on, like, the songwriting credits or whatever, it's him and Anna, you know, husband and wife, that wrote it together, really, because we just kind of came along and supported it a little bit, but they did the whole thing. And then, like, different, right? Like, I came with the lyrics for Exalted Lamb, but I was like, hey guys, I need music and a melody. So that there's like now a ton of input, and the lyrics might even change a little bit in that process as we start singing it. It's like, oh, that phrase, you need to drop a word, or you need to change how it sounds now because of the way we're singing it. And then Ryan was the exact opposite of that. He had all the music for Shalom Everlasting, but no lyrics. Right. So when he's coming to us at that point, it's like, hey, what do you guys think the lyrics would sound like? And he'd be open to musical adjustments too. But so it's kind of like each song represented a different process. And even Your Presence was different too, because it was like, we actually wrote that one out of like our heart. It's kind of like the heart cry of what we felt like was happening at Sonrise at the time. We were all sat in this cabin in Leavenworth, and if anybody's listening, isn't there like a prison called Leavenworth somewhere in another part of the country?
Kansas.
So it's the Kansas? Oh, yeah. Send them to Leavenworth. It's like, well, Leavenworth is a resort town in Washington. It's like a little Bavarian village, and out in the mountains and the woods, and there's rivers, and it's peaceful and beautiful.
Well, so, we're isolated in Leavenworth.
We're isolated in Leavenworth. Just send us into the clink.
Either driving or there.
Yeah.
Songs just come.
Right, they just come. But when we wrote Your Presence, we literally are sitting around and we go, what would be something that captures the heart of like what's happening in our church right now? And it's like, well, we feel like in worship, like our congregation comes with this kind of cry of praise, this roar almost of the congregation that's like, God, we want your presence. We've got to, and there's a line in there, nothing else will do, or or no one else will do. I'm already forgetting as I'm trying to think of it randomly, but that's our confession in that song is like, God, if we don't have you, we're missing it. And it's kind of like Moses' cry, like, Lord, if you don't go with us, with your people Israel, like we don't want to go if you're not going to show up.
Right.
Yeah. And that was really kind of what started that song. And then James, I think, was just plunking on his acoustic guitar and started singing kind of a simple little line or two about that kind of longing for God's presence. Yeah. And so anyhow, that's kind of how it came collaboratively.
Yeah. So based on that, you're cognitively and artistically moving through things, but there's also the inspiration and moving of the Spirit of God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that kind of coalesce with the creativity part and the mechanical part of putting a song together?
Yeah. Yeah. That is actually a great question because at the end of the day, we want it to be something that is really, it's birthed by the Spirit within us. That's something that the Lord pleases the Lord, something He wants to listen to,
Yeah.
Right.
Something that draws Him in a sense. And so it is kind of interesting. Because writing a song, and John can attest to this, writing a book, Pastor Craig, you as well, that things take work. There's practical things you got to do, right. Figuring out chord structure, or as we're sitting down trying to think of, okay, what instruments do we want? Part of this, what are the dynamics of the song? It's kind of the more you get into the weeds of a song, the more complex it gets a little bit, and you have to make decisions. But I think really at the end of the day, the people that are involved in songwriting, it doesn't just mean it's just this select group, but they're part of it because of their hearts, because of their love for the Lord, because they exemplified it, I think, in their life and how they worship, how they live, so and there's just a unity, behind the vision of Pastor John and Pastor Grace here at Sonrise, and then the desire to express that.
Right.
And so I think we come with that. I think already started kind of like unified with, like, we know we want to make songs that glorify the Lord, that can give voice to what God is doing in our church at this time.
So they take work. They don't just fall out of the sky.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe the spiritual inspiration seems to come like in bursts or moments, and like you alluded to it earlier.
Yeah.
Like, you got to capture them, so like if you're a creative person and you don't have a journal or a phone around you, like you can lose your ideas as fast as you get them.
Yes.
And you'll think, oh, I'll remember this later when I get home, and then enough of the day happens to you that you're not expecting, and then it's
You
like,
forget you even had an
whoa,
inspiration.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like learning to capture it, those can feel really Holy Spirit inspired. And then in different writing projects, it's like there's times where I've written and I've wept and I felt like God is like manifest presences with me, and there's times where I felt so dry and like almost mechanical that I'm just getting something done. But hopefully, like, I think if we're giving God what we know he wants, I guess, like, it feels like that's where the Spirit is going to be present. Like, we know he wants obedience. He wants glory unto his name. He wants people to know him.
Right.
Like, there's things that, like, I feel like we bring it from the right heart, then that seems to attract the activity of the Spirit of God.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to something earlier. It just came back to my mind. Is that there have been prophetic words spoken over you and over individuals, but as a church as a whole.
Yeah.
Even to influence this album, right? Unpack that for us a little bit. That's a pretty cool component of it.
Do you guys have more of the memory banks of the prophecies that have been spoken?
I mean, it's hard to remember them word for word, but
I mean, probably over like a couple decades,
I was gonna
honestly.
say,
Our
over a
church
long
is
time.
36 years old. Is that right? 38 years now. And anyway, so those probably first started coming, like, I would guess 15 or 20 years ago at least.
Yeah.
Right. And if I recall, Ryan, you could speak to this a lot more, and John, you as well.
Yeah.
Even this room we're in, there was potentially a heart of having it become a recording studio.
Yeah.
And it's actually, if you could look behind the cameras, not that it's beautiful to look over there, but this
it's a working studio.
A lot of things we record here, and we're doing that, and so even some of the build out of some of the was with that in mind of this was years ago. So
and with completely different people on staff too, but it doesn't mean like the heart was for the house, not necessarily the people, but not that those people didn't contribute.
Right.
Past worship pastors and worship leaders, they contributed a lot to just, I mean, even myself, playing music with them or doing sound for them, and
Eric and Kim and Ruthie. And
I mean, there's been a lot of great worshipers here, and it's funny though, because a lot of those prophetic words were people that have never been to the house before, and they're giving these words to the pastoral staff even at the time. I think the most earliest one that I remember was Cindy Jacobs, and she gave a word over the house of music coming from the house and everything, and I thought that was interesting because she had never been here, from what I can remember. That was her only and first time, I think. And it's also interesting because my sister was her executive assistant for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know her or anything.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
but
So no connection, but speaking a word over the house that
I think
had a profound effect on its fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a lot of words about media, creation, and there was multiple prophetic words from different voices. My dad would probably be the better record keeper on those, and have those fresher for us.
Yeah.
But even like Jason said, the building is, the room we're sitting in right now is part of like, let's dedicate space for recording. We're going to have songwriting. We're going to have worship albums, and it's not that things were worked on here before with other worship pastors and other staff and people in the church. There's some instrumental records with Brenda Super, 1 or 2 things that she recorded, and Eric had a single that he did, so there was definitely projects, but like Now it's actually like a functional studio, not only for podcasting and interview recording kind of stuff, but they're doing the overdubs and mixes, in this room. So it's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. Well, John, you're a pastor and a songwriter, a creative. You do more than just preach.
Yeah.
Spoken words and other things. You're a writer. You got devotionals coming out and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you see this as a contributing factor to the vision, future of the church? This album.
Well, Grace and I both, we love worship music. We love God's presence. Actually, Grace is a really talented musician. She has a really good voice and a really good ear. It's kind of wild how good she hears things. But we just feel like, people need the presence of God. They need encouragement. I think part of singing songs is part of spiritual formation. If you have good doctrine in your songs and truths about God's nature and his character, and it helps people through depression, helps people get more rooted in their faith, helps protect them from false teaching. What we sing forms us. I mean, it's about God first, right? But it does form and shape us. And so getting songs into the hearts of people that we know are biblical, that are Christ-centered, that are God-exalting, that are theologically sound, that usher in the manifest presence of God. Like, this helps our people, and this also helps us with outreach, because, I mean, people might re-listen to one of my sermons, or might reread a book, but what people will definitely listen to over and over and over and over again is a song that gets in their heart.
Exactly.
And so, even just from trying to reach out and grow who we're reaching in our community, in our city, maybe even in the nations of the earth, because the internet's made everything global, it allows us, if they'll hear our music and they're touched by that, then maybe they'll listen to the message about our Jesus, and open their heart to the gospel. And can just open up all sorts of doors for the ability to influence arts and entertainment, and just bring godly values into those areas, help create creatives, or even just be able to disciple other creatives, whether you're ever going to record their songs. Maybe someone wants to write rock music or rap or country or whatever, right? But the more we have experience, then we get to help our people, in their creative endeavors too. So I think we see a lot of value in that too.
And it sounds like, I mean, you as a person and as a team, you're creating something, right? You're putting something in a tangible form that is able to be shared and participated in. And I've always been fascinated with the fact that it contributes to the discipleship process of a new believer. To be able to not just hear the preaching of the word, but sing the songs that reflect that faith. And so there's something for the cognitive part of you, and then the expressive artist part of you, that contributes to your discipleship and growth and those songs stick with you.
Absolutely.
And like you said, there should be some substance, not just a line repeated over 100 times. That, one line that just to fill in space or whatever should have some content to it. So where do you guys, all of you, where do you get inspiration for actually creating stuff? Kind of as a side note, as a staff, we did some AI training earlier this week, and we actually wrote a song through an AI, which we didn't create any of the content, we didn't create the voice, really not much. And this isn't the same thing, obviously. Right. It was kind of a fun process.
It was mind-blowing in a way, though.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing. So let's not put ourselves on the line compared to them, but it takes hard work. But where does your creativity come from?
It's interesting, and I don't know if I'm answering this right, but sometimes like song ideas, or themes of songs. There was a couple weeks ago, John just had a prayer at the end, but I think he was referencing a little bit of your dad's sermon too. And so, there's just one thing that just stuck out to me. He said, reverence the Son, and it just really hit me. I was like, that's a song. And so,
I see. Sure.
And so I made sure to write that down. Actually, text John after service. Hey,
I got a song idea.
This is a song
Reverence
idea.
the Son.
And so I think I have it on my
there you go.
my little melody idea. And so I know for me, like, something just inspires me or captures, that, and then, then I will, if I get a chance to sit at the piano, or if I'm just out there, I have an idea, I'll sing it in the phone, knowing I'll come back and listen to it and be like, do I even like it? That's kind of a little bit of kind of my process. Yeah. And then you start to flesh out all the other stuff if it feels like it's worth taking the time on. But
yeah. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, good.
Mine's a little bit different because a lot of times when I'm writing music, it's up in my bedroom, and a lot of times it's just when I just need to mentally break. So like I just need to go up. I need to play my guitar, and then there's been times where I've written 2 songs in 3 hours, and I have the tools to be able to do it at home, so it's a lot easier for me to maybe get a whole song kind of worked out. But there also is, for me, there's kind of a formula, and it's not to put something in a box, but it's just easier to say, like, I'm just going to do it this way, because then I can actually say I got it done.
I gotcha.
And so I give myself parameters. You're going to have a verse, you're going to have a chorus, you're going to have a bridge and another chorus or something like that.
Right.
And just put it in that context, and it could be whatever chords or whatever ideas that you have, or how it's going to be, what tempo, all that stuff. But for me, it just, getting that break, but then also being inspired by something. Yeah. Sure. like Pastor Jason said, it's just something that somebody said, or somebody said to me, or touched me, or they said it in something that inspired me, and or maybe even just hearing something. Maybe you're just walking down the road and you just hear this da 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 da, and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to get home and write that, and just, like, put it on a phone, put it down to paper, So
I think the inspiration is like, God is fascinating to me, like just scripture reading, daily devotional time, like just he's endless, he's infinite, he's the Alpha, the Omega. I mean, just the nature of God to me, like especially when it comes to writing songs or books or poems about him and biblical themes, is just like, it's so endless. But then, like, I really love being, if I can be still, especially in a beautiful place, I will naturally, I'll just start getting ideas of things I want to write or express that have my interest. I will get random inspiration from someone else's sermon or a life event, or somebody will just say something, one line. Yeah. And I think doing poetry and writing spoken words, I'll hear sound bites real quick and go, oh, that hits. That's powerful. Right, yeah. I could build a whole idea off of that. But I love being like at the river by our house, or being in the Northwest, seeing a mountain view, or at the ocean, Puget Sound, or wherever. I love, like, Chuckanut Drive is one of my favorite areas, where the water can get kind of turquoise, and it just seems otherworldly to me, the way trees grow out of the rocks. And if I go there, I'll just start getting flooded with, I mean, it might not have anything to do with the trees and the rocks and the ocean, but it's just seeing beauty. Yeah. And then the other thing, like Grayson, I love to do that inspires me, is like art galleries. Gotcha. Even if I see dance performances that are really emotive, or listen to other kinds of genres of music that are just beautifully done, like, I'll find that any kind of creative act, whether it's in nature or that people are putting together, really fires me up. Occasionally even a movie, probably less so in movies, but for me, but occasionally a movie, even the cinematography is just so beautiful that I'm just like Ryan said, I think I'm very similar. Like, it can be a break for me, like getting still somewhere, and then all of a sudden that still time, getting rest and trying to break from everything else, becomes like a generator of creative ideas.
It's an otherworldly kind of thing, I would think, in the sense that you don't think about what's going to come out of those moments of inspiration. And being able to recognize them, I guess, is part of that process, right? That this is something more than just a random thought. This is something I can build on. And as you guys already talked about, the whole process of writing both the lyrics and the music, almost two different disciplines, really. Like Elton John and Bernie Taupin. I mean, he was a music guy and the word guy, but they together really made some great songs over the years. But and inspiration, I think, we would say our inspiration would be more geared toward the inspiration of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And the purpose is to glorify Christ,
Mm-hmm.
to encourage and edify the people. And that's what this whole project was about,
Yeah.
right? It's to glorify the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
encourage and engage people in vertical worship, I think we call it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that a central focus of what the whole project is about?
Yeah, I like it, the names of actually the Sonrise songs, like Exalt Forevermore, Exalted Lamb of God, Shalom Everlasting, and Your Presence. You know, we were talking about, what do we even just name this?
Yeah.
And, you know, so,
Yeah, right.
you know, the word exalts, it's just what it's what our heart is.
We're
to
going to
exalt.
play with it.
We're
Yeah.
still
But
playing with
Lord
it, but-
willing, I
but-
mean, with the idea of like, Lord willing, as we're thinking of other future projects, you know, like maybe we'll get collections of songs over time,
Sure.
and we'll just name whenever we do something again. You know, unless Jesus comes back, 'cause you're always supposed to say
That's
that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
That we'd have like one word that encapsulated the heart of each album or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why Exalt was like the clear theme
Yeah.
of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because
Yeah.
we've got 13 songs,
Yeah.
so 4 originals,
3 public
and then the
domains.
5th one is kind of
Yeah,
one of one of them's
a-
kind of a tag or an addition to one, so
Yeah.
kind of 5 originals almost,
yeah,
really, and then the rest are covers,
Are covers,
whether
yeah.
they're old
public
domain
or
songs, like
actual covers,
or actual
more recent
covers of
songs.
other artists that
Uh-huh.
we're doing it all above board. You get the rights
Yeah.
and you pay
Yep.
the royalty type
Yep.
fees and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I remember we were talking with the trademark people,
Yes.
and they were going, "What kind of genre of music is this?"
Yeah.
And you're going, "It's worship," and there's not a category for that on here.
Couldn't quite. Yeah. So,
What genre would you call it? This album?
well, it depends if it's by the attorney doing the copyright
Yeah.
or the trademark. It would be Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. This.
Well, Ryan's an indie rocker, so when he writes songs for us, you know, it
There
kind
you
of has
go.
those
Yeah.
screaming electric guitars that I love.
Mhm.
Ryan was living my best life, you know.
There you go.
No, but he was like Ryan has a lot of recording experience,
Yeah.
and Jason too. They were both in bands that
Yeah.
toured and
Yeah.
wrote music, and so like
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because people are like, are you guys like doing this professionally? And it's like, well, technically, yeah. Once you've written music and you've sold it to anybody, like
That's right.
you're now a professional.
Yeah.
Right?
true.
Like,
Even if you sold it to
are
your
you
mom.
successful?
Yeah,
I don't know how
exactly.
you want to measure success, but
Yeah.
no, but anyway, where were we going with that?
I don't know. It was a trade. What kind of
The
genre of music?
oh,
is
genre,
it?
yeah. But I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
I think we have talked about. I don't know if we've articulated it before. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, like, worship music all kind of sounds like different versions of U2, probably.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's kind of like a rock background to it, but there's like a sound that
Uh-huh.
makes it sound worshipful sometimes. But
Yeah.
I know it's like a whole philosophical debate that could be its whole own episode on, like, you know, should worship music sound like a certain genre, or should it be like a whole bunch of genres that you're
Right.
just worshiping God through country, jazz, you know, rock, rap, R&B, like, anyway. So that, yeah, it's tricky to say, because I guess we probably have a sound that's pretty common for, you know, like American, like, spirit-filled evangelical churches, you know, and it's probably like a little more rock-based. But
Yeah.
I think there's times where we'll dabble with different genres that are more poppy or more jazz or R&B type, like soulful gospel kind of feel. Yeah.
So no disrespect, but it's like the Gaithers at all?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't think we're very
Yeah.
gay.
Think more Lawrence Welk.
Lawrence
than
Welk.
others. I'm just kidding.
Well, what are some last takeaways you want people to have about this album? I mean, some things like, when does it drop? What's the on-ramp to that release
Yeah.
date look like? And where can people find, you know, the incremental weekly drop of a song? However we're going to do that. What's that look like?
Yeah. So we are looking at releasing our first single the last weekend or the last week of March, and then
Good.
release the plan.
Yeah.
At least some initial discovery. So let me put an asterisk, subject to change.
Yeah.
Depending on a few
We
things.
aspire to release
We
it.
aspire.
By that time.
We're thinking of releasing the Sonrise original songs once a week for about 4 weeks, and then release the album is our initial thought.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so hopefully
great.
have the whole album
So,
released by end of April.
End of March through end of April-ish.
Yeah.
Kind of time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have those few songs.
Yeah.
And Ryan, what are you doing right now? Mainly like mixing, just getting the mix.
Yeah, just
As perfected
having
as
fun
we can.
mixing.
Yeah.
Doing some overdubs, and it's coming together. And honestly, I'm proud of it. It's really it's sounding really good. Sonically, it sounds good.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's
great.
subjective, but
Right.
no, yeah, I'm just excited. Again, it's it's not for me. It's for the Lord.
Yeah.
So
I think like some of that, when you record it live, you have to go back and mix and do some overdubs and things, because we're trying to recreate, in a sense, what the live room sounded like. I mean, there could be some little additions and tweaks we do to make it a more pleasant experience, but it's kind of like with photo filters, like, do you just, like, people will post a photo on social media and say unfiltered, like, I didn't doctor this up, but sometimes a filter actually captures the original setting better. Sometimes it like greatly distorts it, but so the kind of the excellence that goes in behind the scenes, all the work that Ryan and Jason do, and then some of the team comes in and helps with different aspects of it as well. But all that kind of tedious, line by line, one instrument, one note at a time, one beat at a time.
Right.
It's all to try to get it to sync up for a pleasurable listening experience, but also to try to recapture the energy, the fullness, the passion of what happened in that room. And if you just record it all and then just take what we recorded and just play it for people, it doesn't actually sound like it did in that room.
Right.
So
That's a good point.
there's all this. Yeah, that's what that process time takes for a while. There's definitely AI tools and new tech that's coming out that can help you expedite some of that process, but you still got to do some work on it behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to think about it. Everybody takes in their songs differently. Some are listening on their iPhone, some are watching it on their TV. Maybe the TV has a soundbar, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
Could be on their computer, could be in their car. Who knows? It could be like my car that's 18 years old, or it could be somebody who's driving a new Tesla. Systems are not quite the same. So all sorts of the gamut is why you put in the work to.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Get it all.
Got to
making
get it
sure it sounds.
It'll be
what it should.
mastered after it's all mixed and the final mix is done. Then you get it mastered, which helps it really be more adaptable to those different listening environments.
And I could speak to like where it'll be available.
Yeah.
It'll be available on almost any streaming service you can think of, from like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, as well as YouTube.
And when people search for it by our church name, by the album name, whatever it ends up being, or
yes, so like on our YouTube channel, it will be on the Sonrise YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It will be under Sonrise Worship.
Yeah.
And
our website would probably have
and our
links to
website
some
would
of
have
it.
the links as well. You can go to isonrise.org, check out
We'll be shouting it from the rooftops.
Shouting
With
it from the rooftops.
Yeah, exactly.
social media videos, emails from Sunday announcements.
So there's another element too we talked about, Jason, was if people, other churches or worship leaders want chord charts or whatever, will those be available for people too?
Absolutely. We're and John, you can let me know too, because we haven't specifically talked about that, but yes, they would be. We really like as well. We want this to be a resource for people. If it really connects with somebody, wherever they are in the world, we'd love to.
Awesome.
We actually already have a request for the song from a girl from our church here that is attending college in Portland.
Oh,
and they would like to do it in their chapel. So.
Good.
So that'll be a part of it. We'll all have that on our website as well, and
Awesome.
very clear where you can download that.
That's cool.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.